Welcome back to the Crypto channel, everyone. My name is Josh, and right now, Bitcoin is still holding above this crucial area of support in the immediate short term, as we've just wiped out both the downside liquidity and the upside liquidity in the immediate short term over the last one day. But we still have a major dump, a major pullback playing out in the US stock market, which is a warning signal that we need to pay attention to for the Bitcoin and crypto market, which I'll talk about in just a moment, alongside Ethereum, which is still bouncing and holding this major area of support here in the short term, while the price of XRP is also extending this short-term bullish divergence, ultimately still playing this out, at least right now. So I'll be talking about all of that and more later in the video, so definitely watch to the end. First of all, just before taking a look at the Bitcoin and crypto charts today, taking a quick look at the US stock market today. This is the S&P 500 index on the 4-hour time frame, and over the last one day, we've ultimately just seen a continued dump in the short term. Now, first of all, we started off with just a slight little bounce on the open compared to the previous trading day close, but obviously, as we can see here, throughout the trading day here on Monday, we did obviously see a continued dump, ultimately just continuing the larger pullback, the larger bearish trends that we're seeing right now on this S&P 500 index chart on the 4-hour time frame. And now potentially some short-term good news is that we are now entering well into oversold territories in the 4-hour RSI for the S&P 500 index. And usually when we hit oversold or get close to oversold on this time frame in this indicator, that's at least a short-term signal telling us that we're starting to go too far to the downside too quickly, and we're likely going to need some time in the short term within the next few days or so to potentially play out some sort of little bounce or some sort of little relief. Now, I want to make this clear. That does not mean this is the bottom. That does not mean that we're going to see a huge bullish trend reversal or anything like that. Once again, the last time we saw an oversold signal or close to an oversold signal here, we did just see a slight little bounce over a few days, over roughly half a week, before ultimately seeing the continuation of this larger bearish trend. And so keep that in mind. Overall, in terms of the momentum and the larger trend we're in, we're still clearly bearish. It's just in the shorter term, within the next few days, within the next week or so, we might see some sort of slight little relief, which is a potential short-term bullish signal for crypto. But overall, continue to expect a lot of weakness across the crypto market if we're talking about multiple weeks or months. And if we're taking a look at the Bitcoin charts today here on the weekly time frame, nothing much has changed on this time frame over the last one day. So the super trend indicator is still sitting in the red, and we're still playing out a massive bearish divergence on the weekly Bitcoin price chart. So once again, when we're talking about the much larger, longer term multi-month trend, clearly this is still currently bearish. We've not really seen enough confirmation to confirm the end of the larger bearish trend, also known as a bear market. But in the somewhat shorter term during the larger bearish trend, obviously over the last multiple weeks, we have been playing out a bit of a short-term relief above the latest local low at 60,000 over the last 1 to almost 2 months now, playing out this oversold signal in the weekly Bitcoin RSI, which is very similar to what we saw around the middle of 2022. Obviously, we're still in a bear market back then, still playing out this massive bearish divergence, but just for around 1 to 2 months, for multiple weeks here, we did play out a bit of a relief during the larger bearish trends. But I want to make it clear, an oversold signal by itself does not mean we've hit the bottom. It's still possible we can go lower later on. And so that is still the situation on the weekly time frame. And if we're taking a quick look at the 3-day time frame, not a lot has changed over the last one day on this chart. We're still ultimately bouncing this same range that we've been in for almost 2 months now, bouncing between this support and this resistance. So first of all, we still have strong support at roughly 60,000 and other short-term levels of support I'll talk about in just a moment. And as for strong resistance or significant resistance, that's sitting in between roughly 72,000 to 76,000. And if we're zooming further into the short term, taking a look at the 4-hour Bitcoin price chart, right now in the very short-term movements, obviously we have continued to hold above this crucial area of support here, which is sitting in between around 65.5k to 66,000. And while I was recording my last video here on the channel, the price of Bitcoin was starting to play out this short-term dump here, but as we can see, we never actually confirmed a 4-hour candle close below around 65,500. We actually confirmed the candle closes back above this area of support, which means we only saw a candle candle wick towards the downside, and we did not actually confirm the break below this support. And so obviously, at least in the short term, that is some good news for the price of Bitcoin, and especially if, for example, the stock market in the coming days starts to play out this oversold signal with maybe just a slight little bounce within the next few days, within the next week or half a week, that sort of time frame. Once again, that can potentially help Bitcoin with just a slight little relief like this in the coming days. Once again, this is talking about the very short-term moves here, but overall, if we're talking about the larger trend, especially on the much larger time frames like the weekly time frame, we're still showing a lot of weakness. I would not expect a significant amount of bullish momentum. I would not expect a significant amount of strength right now across the market, but just in the immediate short term, now that we have continued to hold above this important area of support here for the price of Bitcoin, I would expect as a likely scenario just a little bit more of a relief, which means mostly choppy sideways price action, but slightly leaning towards the bullish direction is ultimately what I expect as the most likely outcome, at least when we're talking about the next couple of days or so. And as for short-term support and a resistance to watch out for, obviously, as I just mentioned, we still have a lot of support in this area in between 65.5k to 66,000. And as for resistance, we have a lot of resistance around here based on previous support flipping into new resistance, which is sitting at roughly 67,500 to almost 68,000. In that area, expect some short-term resistance, and above that, expect more resistance in between 69,000 to 69.5k. But especially as we approach above 71,000, closer towards 72,000, that's where we have a significant area of resistance, as I just mentioned a moment ago, and as I've already been warning about pretty much every day over the last 2 months now. We have significant resistance in the low to mid 70k area, and potentially one of the major causes or one of the major reasons as to why we saw this decent volatility over the last 1 day or so, with first that little dump that basically happened as I was recording my last video, but then the quick little pump, and then just the slight little pullback right here. Potentially one of the main reasons as to why we saw that is due to the fact that we had liquidity both building below the price and above the price, which is something that I talked about in my last video. And so once again, as I said yesterday, before all of that short-term volatility actually finished playing out here, obviously I said we had downside liquidity building at around 65.4k approximately, and a bit of upside liquidity also building at roughly 67.4k approximately. So like I explained in my last video, I said it's very likely that within the next couple of days, the price could potentially take out both of those levels of liquidity by playing out a bit of choppy sideways price action, a bit of volatility to ultimately hit both of those levels, is actually what I said in my last video before we just saw that play out now over the last 1 day. And so ultimately, a lot of this price action that we saw over the last 1 day was simply Bitcoin just wiping out a bunch of positions, over leveraged positions, short positions, and long positions over the last 1 day, wiping out both upside and downside liquidity. So once again, that was one of the major reasons as to why we saw a bit of volatility in both directions. And when we're talking about liquidity that's building right now, we don't really have any significant levels of liquidity that is actually close to the price of Bitcoin as of recording the video. We have a small amount building at roughly 64,500, a small amount building at roughly 68,500, but nothing all that significant. The next significant level of liquidity is building at roughly 72,000, but obviously it's important to understand that between the current price of Bitcoin and 72,000, obviously we have a lot of resistance along the way. First of all, at roughly 67.7k, so as I said earlier, in between really 67.5k to 68k, and then obviously those other points of resistance along the way before we could ultimately hit that higher liquidity up here at 72,000. And so unless we start approaching around 70,000, I'll not be too reliant on that level up there based on this reason alone, because obviously we have to consider all of this information together to figure out what is most likely going to happen for the price of Bitcoin. So based on the current situation, continuing to hold above this support, both wiping out that liquidity towards the upside and towards the downside, it's likely that just in the coming days, the price will kind of stay in this range right here, maybe play out just a slight little relief if especially the stock market at some stage in the next few days starts to play out just a slight little relief, playing out this oversold signal. And so overall, those are my expectations and the key levels and signals to watch out for moving forward for Bitcoin and really the stock market at the moment. But before taking a look at the altcoin market, obviously, if you want to actually trade any of these moves in the price of Bitcoin or any crypto, you need to be set up ready to go on a crypto exchange. And if you use the first link below the video in the description and in the pinned comment, the first link below this this video will take you to this page right here over on the Novava crypto exchange, which by the way is a completely no KYC exchange. You can access this platform from basically anywhere in the world. And if you simply use that first link below the video, once again, you can see on this page right now for a limited time. And by the way, there's a limited number of spaces available because there's actually up to 10,000 USDT per account that you can claim using that link below the video. This is not clickbait. This is not some trading bonus. This is actual real 10,000 USDT that you can withdraw from your account just by simply depositing and trading crypto. And obviously, if you deposit smaller amounts and trade smaller amounts, then you can get smaller bonuses, but you can get up to 10,000 USDT in actual real USDT. And in fact, I did that myself on my own Novava account just a few days ago, and I actually posted a video here on the channel a few days ago of me doing that. So in case you missed that video, I'll play a quick clip of me doing that right now. As soon as the price has a slight little move up, then as you can see right here, it's filling the order, and basically any moment now I should be hitting the prize. As you can see right here, if I simply refresh this page, I should be now eligible for there we go. You have now completed the trading challenge. So as you just saw there, I personally took advantage of this massive 10,000 USDT bonus on my own Novava account just by depositing and trading crypto. So once again, if you're trading crypto anyway or preparing to take the next trading opportunity, you might as well check this out and take advantage of this. Remember, first link below the video, and also remember, Novava is a no KYC exchange. But with that being said, taking a quick look at the Bitcoin dominance chart on the daily time frame, and right now the Bitcoin dominance for the most part is still just bouncing around in the same sideways price range that we've been in over the last multiple months now. In fact, for almost half a year, give or take, we have been pretty much range bound here for the Bitcoin dominance, not really trending in a strong direction either way. And so this is still telling us that a lot of the altcoin market on average is still likely going to perform very similar to whatever Bitcoin is doing, not necessarily outperforming or underperforming. And if we're taking a look at Ethereum on the 3-day time frame, we can see a perfect example of that right now for Ethereum, because right now the Ethereum price chart and the Bitcoin price chart on the 3-day time frame looks almost identical, as we could see, performing very similar to whatever Bitcoin is doing, as I just mentioned. And so right now, obviously, when we're talking about the much larger multi-month trend, this is still technically bearish, but during the long-term bearish trend, obviously for some time now, we have been playing out this relief, this oversold signal, somewhat similar to what we saw back here near the end of 2025, entering into early this year. A decent relief, slightly leaning towards the bullish direction, but we've not necessarily seen enough confirmation yet to fully confirm the end of the larger bearish trend. And as for support and resistance to watch out for, we have a lot of resistance in this area in between around 2.2k to 2.4k. But if we're looking at the daily time frame, we have this golden pocket here acting as strong resistance in between 2150 to 2250. And as for support, I'd expect a lot of support closer towards roughly 1.8k. And if we're zooming further into the short term, taking a look at the 4-hour Bitcoin price chart, obviously right now and over the last one day, we can see very similar price action for Ethereum as what Bitcoin just played out over the last one day. Once again, if Bitcoin's playing out a certain move, expect something similar for a lot of the altcoins, especially the larger altcoins like Ethereum, etc. And right now, obviously that's been the case over the last one day. We saw that short-term dump, and then of course the pump, wiping out liquidity in both directions, but we're still holding above this major area of support here, sitting in between around 1910 to 1930, and we came within just a few dollars from 1930, basically just under 1940 in that $10 range in between 1930 to 1940. That's exactly where we bounced from at this candle wick low. So once again, as we approach closer towards 1930, just above 1.9k, expect a decent amount of support around there on the price chart. And then obviously only if we confirm a break below this area of support with candle closes below that area, and especially if we fail to get back above that area, in that situation, the next important area of support in the short term is sitting in between 1.8k to 1830. And based on the fact that we're still potentially playing out this short-term oversold signal, but we're also kind of lacking momentum towards the bullish direction, it's likely that just over the next one day or so, we'll play out a bit of choppy sideways price action, perhaps slightly leaning towards the bullish direction like this, especially if Bitcoin plays out something similar. So ultimately, that is my expectation in the immediate short term for the price of Ethereum. But when it comes to the much larger moves on the larger time frames, once again, overall, I would expect a lot of weakness on in terms of the long-term trend here. And if we're taking a look at XRP on the weekly time frame, obviously the long-term trend for XRP is clearly still bearish, but in the somewhat shorter term at the moment, and really over the last 1 to 2 months now, we've been perfectly running into this massive area of support here, which is still sitting in between $1.30 to $1.40. And the latest weekly candle close that did confirm over the last 1 day or so, just yesterday, came really close to confirming a break below $1.30, but we've not yet actually confirmed the break below $1.30, which means at least for now, the price of XRP is still holding this area. We're still obviously holding this area as support. It's not yet broken, but if we ultimately break below $1.30, especially with confirmation, and especially if we fail to get back above that area, in that situation, we'd likely see a move down towards roughly $1.13 as the next key level on the price chart. And below that level, the next important area of support is sitting in between 90 cents to $1. But once again, the immediate support is still at roughly $1.30. And if we're zooming further into the short term, taking a look at the 4-hour XRP price chart, obviously the shorter term trend at the moment is still looking very much weak. We don't have a lot of confirmation confirming a massive bullish trend reversal or anything like that, but we still have this bullish divergence, which is technically still active, because over the last 1 day, with that little short-term dump that we saw just yesterday, basically as I was recording my last video, we did actually bounce and continue to hold above this area of support. We never confirmed candle closes below $1.30, which means we actually just formed a lower low in the price while still holding and forming higher lows in the 4-hour XRP RSI. In other words, we extended the previous bullish divergence with another lower low in the price, higher low in the RSI. Therefore, this is ultimately still playing out, and this could potentially continue to play out maybe for another day, maybe a couple of days. Remember, this is only just a short-term signal pointing towards a bit of a break from all of the bearish price action. Remember, a bullish divergence does not mean a huge bullish trend reversal. It does not guarantee we've hit the bottom. It means over the next couple of days, expect a bit of a relief, most likely either choppy sideways price action or slight bullish relief over the next couple of days. And if we're taking a look at Solana on the 3-day time frame, it's a similar situation here. The long-term trend still very much bearish, but we're still also in this same sideways price range that we've been in basically for the last 2 months now, bouncing between this support and this resistance. So we still have strong support here sitting in between $75 to $80, and strong resistance here sitting in between $95 to $105. And if we're zooming further into the short term, taking a look at the 4-hour time frame, obviously right now the price of Solana has basically followed very similar price action to Bitcoin as usual. Once again, a lot of these altcoins likely going to play out very similar price action to what Bitcoin has done, but Solana has actually just formed and confirmed a bullish divergence over the last 1 day, with lower lows confirmed in the price in the candle closes and higher lows confirmed here in the 4-hour Solana RSI, which once again, similar to XRP in the short term, this new bullish divergence for Solana here means we're likely going to play out either a slight bullish relief or maybe just a bit of choppy sideways price action over the next 1 or 2 days as a very likely scenario. And as for supports and resistance to watch out for, I would expect some short-term support at roughly $81 give or take based on this low, and also now this local low here based on the candle closes at roughly $81 acting as support. And as for resistance, I would expect a decent amount of resistance at roughly $85 give or take based on previous support flipping into new resistance. And if we can break out back above $85 in that situation, obviously we have significant resistance up here as we start approaching closer towards $89. And if we're taking a look at the price of Chainlink on the 3-day time frame, the long-term multi-month trend is technically still bearish, but in the somewhat shorter term to mid-term, we're still obviously range bound in this same range that we've been in for almost 2 months now, potentially in a similar situation at the moment compared to what we saw around end of 2025 entering into early this year. So right now, once again, we're still bouncing between support and resistance, which right now we still have a lot of support in between $7.90 to $8.50 and a lot of resistance in between $9.50 to $10. And in fact, over the last 1 day, we've exactly seen another bounce from this exact area of support here over the last 1 day. So obviously still expect bounces from this support, rejections from this resistance as a very likely scenario in the coming days or weeks, ultimately just remaining in this larger range. And in terms of the very short-term moves, once again, just follow the Bitcoin analysis to figure out what is likely going to happen in the short term for a lot of these altcoins. And remember, if you want to trade any of these moves in the price of any crypto, check out that first link below the video to Novava if you want to take advantage of massive bonuses that are only available using that first link below the video to the Novava exchange, which once again is completely a no KYC exchange. And of course, if you want to actually know how you can trade crypto, no matter what direction the price goes, to profit at all times in the market, then make sure to watch these videos popping up right here on your screen, because the video in the top left shows you how you can profit from bullish or bearish price action using long positions or short positions. And the video in the bottom left shows you how you can easily profit from choppy sideways price action. But anyway, that is everything that I have to say for today. I really hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you all in the next video.